Hello, I'm Adriana Williams, Partner Success Manager at Hello Alice. Thank you so much for viewing this recording, and thank you as well to the National Disability Institute for having me here. So today I'm here to talk about Hello Alice and what we do. Here's a quick rundown of what I will be covering during this presentation. First off, I'll introduce to Hello Alice and a quick introduction. I'll also talk about funding opportunities, as well as best practices for applying to grant programs. And lastly, I'll do a quick resources overview of what we have to offer at Hello Alice. So in case you've never heard of Hello Alice, we are a free mission-based platform that supports high-growth small business owners through technical assistance, education, resources, and access to capital opportunities. And just a little bit more about us and our owners, essentially our users, we call them owners, those that use our platform. The majority of our owners come from these four industries: beauty, self-care, consumer goods, food and beverage, and business services. And also they tend to be younger businesses. The majority of our owners have established their business in less than 2 years, I would say. And there's also a big concentration in these 5 urban areas, which may not be a surprise as they are big cities: Los Angeles, Houston, Atlanta, New York, and Chicago. And again, a little bit more about Hello Alice. We are the largest community for small business owners in the US, with a focus on new majority. And what is the new majority, right? The new majority is comprised of historically underrepresented groups, to include female founders, the BIPOC community, as well as the LGBTQ+ community, military connected, as well as founders who have disabilities. And as you can see, an overwhelming majority of our owners are female and identify as being Black. Approximately 11% are Hispanic, and 10% are founders who have disabilities. And at Hello Alice, we recognize that access to capital is a tremendous challenge for most entrepreneurs, regardless of the stage that the business is in. And in order to address this challenge, we've worked very hard to provide our owners with options when it comes to access to capital. Last year, we launched a credit card, both a secure and unsecure option. Also on our platform, you'll find many grant opportunities. And lastly, we also help our owners connect with lenders via our financing marketplace. And full disclosure, Hello Alice is not a lender, but we definitely try to be a matchmaker and connect our owners with potential lenders that can help them. And so if you've never visited the Hello Alice platform, I highly recommend that you do. There's a whole lot of information and resources, one of which includes the Hello Alice Funding Center, where you'll be able to see many grant opportunities, learn more about our credit card options, and connect with lenders. And here on this slide, you'll see the current grant opportunities that we have available. And none of our programs are identical. So they're each focusing on helping different industries, for example, or they're just very niche. And so if you haven't already done so, open an account with Hello Alice so that you're able to apply to these opportunities. For instance, this past week, we've launched 3 different grant programs. One was through DoorDash, the Restaurant Disaster Relief Fund, which focuses on helping restaurants located in areas that have been impacted by a federally declared natural disaster. We also have a program that just opened last Thursday with eBay called the Up and Running Grants, which focuses on helping eBay sellers. And also lastly with Progressive, which just launched this past Monday, which focuses on helping Black identifying entrepreneurs in purchasing a commercial vehicle. We do have grant opportunities open throughout the year, so I highly recommend that you frequently check our funding center for the latest grant opportunities. And speaking of grant opportunities, one item which I also want to touch upon is best practices when it comes to applying for a grant, because that is undoubtedly our most popular resource. And this is a question which many of our owners ask, how can I write an application, a grant application that stands out from the crowd? So I'd love to quickly shed some light on that topic. So as you can see here, we have some tips for writing a strong grant application. Number one, undoubtedly, is please check to see whether you're eligible or not, right? Number one question, do I meet the eligibility criteria? For instance, if the program is only open to female founders, unfortunately, our male counterparts wouldn't be eligible, right? Also, another question to ask, what do I need in order to complete this grant application? Another question is, what are the grant reviewers, for instance, looking in an ideal applicant? And lastly, do I have time to do this well? It really takes a lot of thought and effort and time, of course, to fill out a grant application, as anyone who has filled out a grant application can attest to. So these are just some tips that I wanted to share. And also some other tips that I'd love to quickly run through is it's definitely important, I would say, to flesh out your narrative, such as your mission, vision, and value statements. These can really help you craft your elevator pitch and evaluate your mission alignment. Another tip is to gather data that demonstrates your knowledge of your business and industry, as well as your customers. Numbers tend to wow people. And so providing data on your company's impact or the need for your product will be an incredible asset for your grant application. Another tip that I like to share oftentimes is to be as specific as possible. For any grant applications you see on our platform, we generally allow up to 250 words, sometimes more, per question. And these are the qualitative questions, obviously. So please be sure to use those 250 words. Be as specific as possible, including a detailed description of how you intend to use the grant funds, even, just writing out exactly how much is going where, how much is being used for payroll, for instance, or for marketing, etc. Because grant reviewers tend to like those details. And lastly, if you need help with your grant application, please feel free to enlist a friend or colleague to review your grant application, because another set of eyes definitely helps. So that's, just a wrap up of best practices on grant applications. And lastly, resources to help small businesses launch and grow. We have a tremendous amount of resources available on our platform. And I think that a lot of entrepreneurs can definitely leverage what we have so that their business can successfully launch and grow. And so obviously, as you see here on this slide, we have on Hello Alice what are called guides. This is educational content that covers many different topics ranging from marketing, budgeting, management, etc. So once you create a Hello Alice account, you'll have access to all these resources. And also you will receive a weekly owner newsletter that provides all the latest grant opportunities and exciting resources that are available. We work with many partners that often ask us to help promote any cohort programs or accelerators. And so our owner newsletter is definitely something that you wouldn't want to miss. And speaking of resources, something which we're tremendously proud of that we've recently launched is the Business Health Score. It's basically an assessment tool designed to help small business owners understand the overall health of their business and the actions they need to take in order to improve it. The score triggers recommendations to our owners on actions that they need to take within the Hello Alice platform to improve their score. And so our owners are invited to complete the business health score on our platform. And then after the assessment is done, Hello Alice will provide a list of recommended resources and educational content. And I definitely highly recommend all entrepreneurs to leverage this tool, because it can really help set your business on the right track in terms of making the right financial decisions. And this concludes my presentation. It's been a pleasure running through all this information, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And again, thank you so much for viewing this recording.
Wonderful. Thank you, Adriana, for that fantastic introduction into Hello Alice. And so for the remaining of our webcast, we'll just be having a conversation about ways that vocational rehabilitation counselors and those supporting entrepreneurs with disabilities can continue to interact with Hello Alice, make sure that they're using Hello Alice as a resource. And so again, thank you for spending time with us. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in this line of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So small businesses are just, I'm something really passionate about, especially access to capital. So I started off with my career working at a nonprofit small business lender. They're known as community development financial institutions, and there are very many throughout the country. But what got me interested in going into the CDFI world almost 9 years ago was that my dad was able to obtain an SBA loan to purchase a piece of commercial property probably about 40 years ago. So a long, long time ago. So I understand a lot of the challenges that entrepreneurs face, especially when you're just starting out. So that's what really sparked my interest in working in the field of access to capital. And then going to Hello Alice, especially given the mission at Hello Alice, our focus on the new majority, including obviously entrepreneurs with disabilities. And that's something that I'm really passionate about. So I'm so happy to be here to talk about this topic.
Awesome. Thank you. So maybe even just share a little bit, if you're comfortable, about talking about the community development institutions. And you mentioned that there's one in every state as maybe an additional resource that vocational rehabilitation counselors could interact with.
Absolutely. So community development financial institutions, that's a designation given to a nonprofit by the U.S. Department of Treasury. And so what CDFIs focus on is usually to help historically populations that have been left behind. For instance, you know, the BIPOC community, women entrepreneurs, as well as entrepreneurs with disabilities. So there are CDFIs located throughout the country. Some are national in focus, and some focus more on, for example, regional areas. So I would encourage you all to go to the Opportunity Finance Network, where they have a CDFI locator, where you can put in your state, your city, and it will pull up all the CDFIs that would be able to serve your area. And I have to say that CDFIs, they all have very different focuses. So some would focus on, let's say, small business lending, whereas others would provide, you know, mortgage lending. So there's a lot of different angles when it comes to CDFIs. So as you go to the Opportunity Finance Network website on that locator, they will ask you specifically what you're looking for. So just be cautious of that and just click on small business lending, obviously, if that's what you're looking for. But it's a great resource.
Excellent. That's fantastic. And I think it'll be helpful for counselors to know that that is just one more resource where they could be supporting entrepreneurs that they're working with. If they're looking for a financial institution, it sounds like one of those CDFIs might be one that they would want to reach out to or establish a working relationship with.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because CDFIs tend to be more flexible in their credit box compared to, let's say, a traditional bank. And I know, unfortunately, you know, this year, because of some bank runs, for instance, Silicon Valley Bank, you know, a lot of small businesses are seeing that banks are really tightening their credit box. So it's been a lot harder for small businesses to obtain a credit line, for instance, or a loan even. So I know, having worked with some traditional banks, they usually require at least 2 years in business and a certain amount of revenue. I would say that CDFIs are a lot more flexible. Some provide startup financing, which is incredible because most banks don't. And also, in terms of your personal credit score, they're also more flexible. For example, if you've had a past bankruptcy or foreclosure in the past, banks will pull that up. And I know oftentimes people think, oh, that was over 10 years ago, it's off my credit. Believe me, banks will somehow be able to dig that information up. And that's where CDFIs come in. Usually they are okay after a bankruptcy has been discharged for 1 or 2 years, I would say. And so they're just more lenient to work with, and they're an incredible resource. And I know they're the best kept secret. And yeah, having been as part of the CDFI world, I don't think it should be a secret, just because, we see, and I've seen personally, a lot of small business owners resort to predatory lenders, which we absolutely do not want to see. And these predatory lenders, just be very careful, because they oftentimes require small businesses to make daily payments, regardless of what the sales were. And the payback time, it's really short. And that's where it hurts small businesses, because they end up paying a lot of money and it hurts their cash flow on a daily basis. So I know that's another topic, but yeah, there are a lot of lenders out there these days. Just be very careful, read the fine lines, do your research, talk to several lenders, just to be safe. And it's oftentimes best to apply for credit when you don't need it, because that's just, some piece of advice, because when you are in a rush, for instance, if you need to buy inventory, let's say, you need it next week. I know I've seen it firsthand. Small business owners will be forced to take on a loan that they actually can't afford. And that's another question. Can I afford this loan, right? So just make sure you're working with a lender that you're comfortable with, that you feel is honest with you. That's another piece of advice I would share.
Yeah, that's great and incredibly helpful. So to kind of converge the conversation around the CDFIs and Hello Alice, have you worked with CDFIs in the past, where what's maybe been a story with an entrepreneur that maybe has had access to a grant or capital through the connection of Hello Alice, and how that all kind of works together?
Yeah, so on our platform, you'll see the financing marketplace, and that's where we have over 90 lenders, including CDFIs, where we sort of play matchmaker. So Hello Alice is not a lender, but we recognize the fact that access to capital is something that's crucial for most small businesses, regardless of the time you have in business. Going from a very startup stage to a more mature business, it can be tough to get the capital that you need. So by going to the financing marketplace, you can fill out a very short application form, which basically just takes into account the high level details, like how long have you been in business for, which state are you located, what was your revenue last year, what's the loan amount or line of credit amount that you're looking for, and we would match you with the best lender that would suit your needs. And so, I highly encourage any entrepreneur who's looking for capital to also visit our financing marketplace on our platform.
Excellent. So most vocational rehabilitation counselors who are supporting entrepreneurs or business owners with disabilities are supporting them in kind of that startup phase. So within their, first year of business and even that development phase, what would be the best way for them to interact or access Hello Alice in that phase of business development?
Yeah, so creating an account with Hello Alice is completely free. And I would encourage any entrepreneur who's starting out, just learning what they need to do to sign up with Hello Alice, create an account. There will be a lot of resources on the platform, anywhere from how do I create a business plan, for instance, how do I build a team, our marketing and payroll and all that good stuff. That you will find on our website, on our platform. They're called milestones, and they're basically like courses that you take on our platform that are designed to really educate and inform entrepreneurs on what their next steps are and what resources are out there. So that's definitely a very important resource, I would say, to leverage for any entrepreneur. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. In your webcast, you talked a little bit about tips for writing a strong grant application. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And
yes, absolutely. Great. Yeah. So step number one is find out whether you're eligible. Unfortunately, we do see quite a few applications from our owners that do not qualify. So make sure to read through the eligibility criteria before you submit an application, because you certainly don't want to spend a whole lot of time on an application for a grant program that you don't qualify for, right? Makes sense. That's tip number one. Tip number two is to be thoughtful about your response. At Hello Alice, we usually allow up to 250 words or sometimes 300. Make sure to use it. The devil is in the details, right? So provide, for instance, one of the questions that we often ask is, how do you intend to use the grant funds? Be as prescriptive as possible. Say, hey, I'm going to spend $10,000 on purchasing inventory, another $5,000 for marketing. Just provide as much detail as possible, because that's what our application reviewers are looking for. Also provide knowledge of your industry. Put numbers in there. We like to see that. We want to see that the applicant has done their research into their business industry. They know there's a need for their product or service. And so to any application reviewer, that shows thoughtfulness. Obviously, this person put some thought, did some research into this, and it shows on the application, obviously. Another tip is to enlist a friend, perhaps a colleague, business partner, to look through the application, because sometimes, I've experienced this. I've looked at something for so long, I don't even realize, like, hey, I'm missing this X, Y, and Z. And so having another set of eyes really helps. And this could also be, an advisor, right? And so, just asking for another set of eyes, I think it would be super helpful. So those were the top 3 tips, I would say, that come to mind.
Yeah, great advice. So focusing on, make sure that you include numbers, that you're specific about your requests, where you would spend that money, whether that would be on marketing or product. In that, are there a specific number of reviewers, or actually, to go back, one of the things that you said is that a lot of individuals apply but aren't eligible. Are there some top things where you see that an eligibility criteria that oftentimes gets missed, or some commonalities?
Sure, absolutely. So one is, we've had nonprofits apply to a program that's for profits, right? That's a very common one. Another is the gender. A lot of our programs are focused on female founders. We get male applicants. Very simple things people tend to overlook. And unfortunately, I've also come across applications where the applicant specifically put the name of the grant program. And this isn't so much as application eligibility criteria, but more about being thoughtful. They were applying to a completely different grant program, and they named another grant program. So this tells me that they were just copy and pasting. Yeah. And so I don't think, any reviewer would like to see that, obviously. Yeah. So those were some of the common pitfalls, I would say. And also, I would say geographic location. Some of our programs, let's say one that was recent was with UBS, democratizing friends and family round. specifically targeted towards female founders based in New York City. And so often we've gotten quite a few that were outside of that geographical area. So that's another factor to look into. Am I in the right geographical area? Should I be applying to this? Yeah. So just to recap, right? Are you a nonprofit, and is this program for nonprofits? Right. 2, gender. 3, geographic location, and also revenue. If, let's say, most of our programs target smaller businesses, so either less than 1 million in annual revenue or less than 3 million. Sometimes it depends on the program. But we've received applications where the business is pretty big, so they didn't qualify for that grant amount. So those
some of the businesses that individuals might be starting may not even be close to like that $1 million revenue dollar amount, right? Does that preclude them from being considered for any of these grants? I mean, if they're a much smaller operation,
not at all. And honestly, most of our owners, their businesses tends to be on the newer side. So the majority of our owners have been in business for less than 2 years. The large majority have revenues of around 50,000 to 100,000. So not at all. They would not be precluded. And most of our partners are aware of that, and so. And that's why most of our programs, in terms of the eligibility criteria on the revenue side, is not high. It's not on the high end. Like, we don't require at least $1 million to $2 million. So the average grant amount at Hello Alice is between 10 to 15,000. And so I mean, bigger businesses, I would say a $10 to $15,000 grant wouldn't be as meaningful, right? If you're making 7 million in annual revenue, 10 to 15,000 is just a blip. So
yes. And I think really reinforces that connecting with Hello Alice really could be a good fit for some of the entrepreneurs that vocational rehabilitation counselors are working with, because so often individuals are starting a business to employ themselves, not necessarily with intention of creating a business yet that would employ others. And so the intent is that, being self-employed, but to cover their own bills, expenses, and, sometimes it's just that $10,000 or $15,000 grant that might help give them access to, within vocational rehabilitation. In some states, they have a match requirement. So then vocational rehabilitation could match that 10 or 15. And would that be something important to share in that, for those reviewers for grant applications? Is it possible to use a grant to match other funds to get access to? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. That can be included in a grant application, like full disclosure, this was how I intend to use my funds. And most reviewers will appreciate the transparency, obviously. So absolutely. That's a good point.
Awesome. So what's the Hello Alice team like, right? I mean, they're a big database, a beautiful website, but are you a team of one?
Oh no, thank goodness. But so we're a fully remote company. And I'm based out of Southern California, and a lot of my colleagues are on the East Coast, like Florida, New York, New Jersey. So what really brings us together, I would say, is our mission, because and that's what really gives us the passion and the motivation to do what we do. And so I feel very blessed to be part of this team. And, we try to offer as much as possible to our owners, because it's not easy, that journey to entrepreneurship. It's not a steady paycheck, right? When you're first starting out. And so, our founders, Elizabeth and Carolyn, they themselves were entrepreneurs. And so they understood that journey, and they came together and said, hey, let's share what we've learned. And let's share what we can do together. And so, we with all the entrepreneurs out there. And so that's how they started with Hello Alice. And yeah, here we are today. So, and it's been a wild ride, as we all know, right? With the pandemic, right? And then there were inflation issues, supply chain issues, and now, there's been talk of a recession. So I feel like there's always work out there to be done to help our entrepreneurs. It's never a dull moment, unfortunately.
Absolutely. Did you see a huge increase with COVID or after COVID around reaching out to Hello Alice? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I was not part of the Hello Alice team during the early stages of the pandemic, but I know that at Hello Alice, there were a lot of programs that were focusing on helping small businesses survive through the pandemic. Certain industries were really hit hard. For example, I would say like restaurants, for instance, they really had to pivot, a lot of them. Instead of building out a physical location, perhaps they had to purchase, vans to help, delivery, or build out a website where they can accommodate online orders. Everything had to shift to a more virtual environment. So yeah, we definitely saw a lot of small businesses signing up on the Hello Alice platform, specifically to apply for grants. I would say that grants is definitely our #1 resource. But we also want to emphasize that it's not just about grants. There's also an educational component to it, which I'm sure, the counselors know all about it, right? So that's really important, because what I've seen personally is that, some entrepreneurs are really good at making money, but not so good at managing. So making and managing are two completely different things. So just even some, like, hey, you need a business checking account. I think oftentimes a lot of entrepreneurs kind of fuse the personal and the business together. And so that's like, entrepreneurship 101, right? Try to separate the two. Do separate the two, and maybe apply for a small business credit card, for instance, which we do have at Hello Alice. We do offer a small business credit card. Open up a small business checking account, establish an EIN with the IRS, right? And so that's, these are steps towards having a business, I would say. Graduate eventually to getting a loan with a traditional lender. That's something else. Yeah, that's I always try to encourage entrepreneurs to think of. So yeah, I know a lot.
That's really really helpful to know about that education piece. One, I think within the vocational rehabilitation field, there are counselors that do have a specialty in self-employment, but then sometimes there are counselors that don't necessarily have that specialty, and they're looking for a little extra knowledge, or maybe it's connecting the job candidate with community resources that are available for that education piece. So can you tell us a little bit more about how someone might access some of those other pieces of Hello Alice?
Yeah, absolutely. So aside from just educational content on our platform, we also offer webinars, obviously, and actually next Thursday, we have a webinar coming up regarding, for instance, grant application writing, best practices. So I'll be happy to share that with you, Ashley. That's coming up in less than a week. Time flies. So yeah, webinars, obviously. We do host some in-person events in certain areas. So I would encourage for any entrepreneur, if you haven't already, to open up an account at Hello Alice, and you will be automatically receiving our weekly newsletter, which has a wealth of information ranging from what are our current grant opportunities to our webinars, as well as any other resources that our partners, whether it be enterprise or our ecosystem partners, are offering. So yeah, there's a lot of information in that newsletter, and very useful information. So highly encourage any entrepreneur to take advantage of that.
Excellent. We will make sure that we also share those resources with attendees in our webcast as well. That's fantastic to know that there's so many resources available. If say a vocational rehabilitation counselor wanted to reach out and like talk to somebody at Hello Alice, is that an option to say, you know, to kind of have some support with any troubleshooting or anything like that?
Yeah, I would recommend, so anyone with a Hello Alice account can submit a support ticket through their account. And that's pretty easy to do. Or you can first email alice@helloalice.com. That goes directly to our customer support team. So those would be the two best ways to connect with us. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And are there any success stories that come to mind around your work around entrepreneurship or at Hello Alice that you could share? I think oftentimes, you know, when we're supporting other entrepreneurs or just even thinking about business concepts, it's always helpful to hear additional stories of what others have experienced or are inspired by.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been participating in some of the awards video calls that some of our grant programs record. And, you know, I've talked to many of our owners in some of these grant programs where they're truly thankful because, yeah, it's been, as we all know, a tough environment for a lot of small businesses. And so, for instance, with one of our owners, we call them owners, they're our users on our platform. Yeah. And so with one of our owners, specifically, she has really been not just looking for grant money, but also looking for a mentor. And so with this particular program I mentioned earlier with the UBS Democratizing Friends and Family Round, it includes a mentorship component. And so she was beyond grateful because, you know, like we mentioned earlier, there's an educational component, not just grants. And so she was absolutely thrilled that she was paired with a UBS mentor. And that was how the program was designed. Like UBS wanted their employees to also engage with these grantees. And so, yeah, mentorship is actually starting soon. And along with the mentorship, we're also hosting a 2-day, we call them boost camps, for these grantees at the UBS headquarters in New York City at the end of this month, actually. So yeah, that was a success story just because I feel like, you know, these grantees are not just, you know, looking for money, but also looking for guidance.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think that's great, and reminds us that, you know, so often it is the importance of mentorship, the importance of a community, and how, as a business owner, even, you know, I think a lot of times we focus on who's kind of your community and your support around the startup phase, but that really continues throughout the life of your business and who you rely on and look to for support.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And we've heard back from we usually do a post-grant survey of our small businesses that have received a grant. And obviously they're all very grateful for the grant opportunity. And all of them were able to, you know, use the funds towards what they intended to. And so, yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of success stories out there that I'm not capturing precisely, but yeah, I know a grant can really mean a lot, especially to smaller businesses that are just starting out. So yeah, I'm thankful that we're able to help these small businesses. And
yeah,
we're not able to help more, but because grant money is limited. But
yeah. If someone were to like secure a grant through using Hello Alice, is there a certain way that works as far as like distribution or follow-up or
Yes, we usually after 3 or sometimes 3 to 12 months, we follow up with a post-grant survey, just asking our grantees if the grant money was helpful, where are you at with your business, just some follow-up questions like, has your revenue increased because of this grant? So general questions, but yeah, something that our partners find helpful, because obviously they want to know whether the money was spent, had an impact, obviously. So we want to be able to measure that as well.
Excellent. Wonderful. Is there anything else that you would want our audience to know about you or Hello Alice, or any advice?
Yeah, I would say that I know it could be a very noisy environment. There's a whole lot of resources out there, and seems like it's very overwhelming. But I would say that, the good news is that there are a lot of resources, and a lot of them are free. So just make sure to just take a deep breath, one day at a time, do your research, talk to people, because you'll be surprised. There's definitely a lot of help out there, and you're not alone. And so I think it's great to be able to, especially join a community where you can network, talk to other people, and learn from their experience, because it really takes a village to build a business. And so, yeah, don't feel overwhelmed because, it certainly isn't. And so, yeah, just take it one day at a time. And also, I definitely admire entrepreneurs, just because, yeah, I know it's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of unknowns. It takes a lot of courage, but I know it's like watching a child grow, planting the seeds, and it could be such a rewarding experience that's life-changing. So just tip my hat off to you.
Wonderful. I cannot think of a better note to end on, and love the reminder of just to take a deep breath, and, in those moments of overwhelm and noisiness. So Adriana, I can't thank you enough for joining us at the Center on Self-Employment. And I am hopeful that vocational rehabilitation counselors, entrepreneurs that they're working with will engage with Hello Alice and really use you all as a resource and an additional way to support their businesses. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. It's been a pleasure.